Hey everybody, welcome back to another review. Today we're going to be taking a look at something a little different. It's nothing Gundam related and it's not even made by Bandai. We're going to be taking a look at the Frame Arms Girl Greifen by Kotobukiya. Before we get started on the review, I'd like to give a big thank you to my sponsor, Galactic Toys. They hooked me up with this kit entirely for free, so thank you to them. If you'd like one of these kits for yourself, head on over to their website with the affiliate link down in the description. Also, be sure to use code YSG10 at checkout for 10% off your order. With that being said, let's get on to the review. So this is Greifen. This is what she'll look like straight out of the box, snapped together, no panel lining, and there are no color correcting stickers whatsoever with this kit. Everything you see here is pure plastic color separation. And I gotta say, it looks really good. This was my first time working with one of Kotobukiya's model kits, and my first time doing something non-Bandai in general. And overall, I had a pretty good experience. There were a select few parts that were a little bit too loose or a little bit too tight, but overall they don't affect the finished product at all. So after completing this kit, I can safely say the build was decently fun, and the finished result is pretty solid. However, despite being solid in most all aspects, the hands and the head do tend to pop off when I'm handling this kit. They can be popped back on really easily though, so it's never really been a bother for me. Now, of course, this kit does come with a lot of other stuff, such as that bipedal mech that we saw in the first shot, but I won't be talking about any of that until a little bit later in this video, because I'd like to start off by just taking a look at Greifen herself without any of her accessories or anything else. So, like I basically already said, the color separation on Greifen is really nice. There's no color correcting stickers or anything. I like the color scheme, the proportions, the look of everything. It's just a nice kit in general. I'd also like to point out the detailing on her face is super nice. From the sculpt of the face itself to the eyes, cheeks, and eyebrows, it just looks good. It doesn't look uncanny or weird. It just looks really nice. Now, she does come with swappable face plates, but I won't be covering that until we get to the accessories segment, which will be later on, because some of the accessories get caught up in the transformation. You'll see what I mean. I'd just like to be able to show off all the accessories at once so they're not scattered throughout the video, so we'll be taking a look at those a little bit later. Anyways, as far as aesthetics goes, Greifen looks great. There's not really much of anything that needs to be done to her to make her look accurate to the box art, and I would show the box off more, but it got pretty damaged in shipping, so yeah. Alright, so now let's take a quick look at the seam lines of this kit, and then we can move into the articulation. So I really gotta say, the seam lines on this kit are not that bad. We do have a couple noticeable ones, but overall, it's really not enough to bother me. So really the main biggest seam line we have on this kit starts at the upper thigh and runs all the way down the leg, under the foot, and goes up the backside of the leg. Basically, you have a gigantic seam line running through the entirety of both of the legs. Thankfully, this one is the worst offender on the whole kit. The other ones are really not that bad. We do have seam lines running up the arms, but it's actually very cleverly disguised as actual seams on fabric. They have this raised edge that does a really good job of hiding the actual plastic seam, so I think that's really cool. We do have a somewhat noticeable seam line on both the tops of the shoulders right here, and the only other seam line on this kit is the one on the back of the headphones. It's pretty noticeable, but it's on the back of the kit, so I don't really care because I'm not going to see it when it's up on my shelf. Of course, even though I don't care about it, I know that there are some people who do, so that's why I like to point these out. Anyways, that's about all there is to say about the seam lines. Let's move on and take a quick look at the articulation. As for articulation, starting from the head down as usual, the head's on a ball joint. We get a little bit of a back and forth. Head can rotate 360 degrees. Ponytails can rotate 360 degrees, and this back segment of her hair can move up and down. As for the arms, we have a double jointed shoulder connection. One of the joints is a ball joint and the other one is a hinge joint. We get a 360 degree spin at the bicep, and we get an okay elbow bend. The hands also sit on a ball joint, and the arm can move up and out that far. Upper half of the torso is on a ball joint, and it can spin around a full 360 degrees for some reason. We also get a nice back and forth range of motion at the upper torso, and a really nice side to side as well. Moving on to the leg, we have a full 360 degree rotation at the upper thigh. We have a very nice bend at the knee, 360 at the ankle, foot pointed all the way up, and all the way down. However, you have to be careful because if you angle the foot too far down, it'll make this ankle part pop off and go flying, so try to avoid that. We also get a very nice toe bend. She can kind of do the splits, however, if you really want to free up the range of motion at the upper thigh, you can pull the joints down and slightly out of place to free up a little bit more articulation in the legs. Here's the splits after popping the joints out, and you can definitely tell there's a difference. Keeping the thigh joints fully extended, here's the kick all the way up to the front, and here's the leg kicked out all the way to the back. So before we begin talking about her mech, let's get a quick size comparison. Here's Greifen compared to the high-grade Gundam Exia, the Converge Gundam XX, Master Grade Kyrios, and the high-grade Dendrobium. So for now, that's about all there is to say about Greifen herself. Let's move on to taking a look at the mech, and we'll come back to Greifen once we look at the accessories. So here is the little bipedal mech that comes with this kit, and I gotta say right off the bat, I don't really care for this thing, to be honest. At least not when it's in this form. Don't worry, I will elaborate on what I don't like about this mech as we take a little bit of a closer look at it, so let's do that right now. Now of course, this does just boil down to personal taste, but I'm not a huge fan of the overall design of this thing. It doesn't look bad per se, it's just not really my cup of tea. I much prefer its alternate mode, which we'll show off in a bit. When it comes to color separation, this thing is basically the antithesis to Greifen herself. With Greifen, the color separation was great, and it looked basically accurate to the box. However, if you look at the mech, there's a ton of mechanical details that are missing color separation. There's a lot of stuff that when you look at the box, it should be gray, but it isn't. Of course, this thing doesn't have horrible color separation, but it is going to need a lot more work than Greifen would to be box art accurate. On top of that, this thing is not very fun to handle or try to pose. The legs just don't want to cooperate with me, and it always feels like I'm fighting between loose and tight joints. And I can never get both of the feet to plant flat on the ground, it's always wobbly. Now, the one saving grace this thing has when it comes to stability is you can plug it into the included stand, which is pretty nice. Now, this thing is supposed to be some sort of vehicle for Greifen, as we can see with the little area to sit, the places for her feet to go, and the handles for her to hold on to. However, trying to get her into a position where she's actually riding the mech is nothing short of frustrating. Trying to deal with the mech itself is one thing, but trying to deal with the mech and Greifen at the same time is a nightmare. On top of dealing with the stability problems for the mech, Greifen herself doesn't even have a way to tab in. She just sits there loosely. Seriously, there's nothing keeping her in place. You're really telling me you're going to add all of these holes all over her body and you're not going to make use of a single one? Thankfully though, we do get this alternate pair of hands which can sandwich around the handles, and this allows Greifen to at least stay in place a little bit more solidly. However, despite that, I still have a pretty difficult time getting her into any sort of natural looking position, and it's still a pain trying to fiddle with her and the mech at the same time. It's really not worth it for me. Thankfully though, like I mentioned briefly earlier, this mech does have an alternate form which I like a lot more. However, before we get into the process of transforming it into that alternate mode, let's take a brief look at the mech's articulation. Now, because this mech has two modes, there are a lot of parts on here that belong to the alternate mode, so even though technically those parts can move, I won't be counting them in the articulation of the mech itself. We'll take a look at those when we look at the other mode. Now, normally when I do articulation, I like to start from the head and work my way down, but this thing really doesn't have a head, so let's start from the front and work our way to the back. First up, we have this little panel that can move forward and backward. The handles can both move up and down, and they can swing inward and outward like this. The main seat area sits on a double joint and can move up and down just like this. The legs can spin around 360 degrees, and technically the legs could pull off the perfect splits, but these two parts on top collide with things and make that impossible. With just one leg extended, it can move out this far, and here's as far as it can go with both legs out. We get some rotation here. Platforms for the feet can move up and down. Rotation here. 360 degree spin here. 360, 360, 360. So that about covers all of the articulation on Greifen's mech. Now let's get it transformed into the alternate mode. To start up the transformation, you're going to want to first make sure that you unplug the stand if you had it plugged in already. Remove the legs from both sides. Bend the front segment downward. Remove these small pieces from both sides. Untab this back section and fold it downwards on both sides. Pop this off on both sides. Take both arms, bring them up, flip them around, and then put them back down. Remove this piece, open up all the fingers on the hand and swing the thumb down, and finally split it apart down the middle. So now that the transformation is complete, or well, it was more of a disassembly process than a transformation, I guess, we can finally take a good look at Greifen with all of her accessories. So here is Greifen with everything that she comes with, and we get a ton of stuff. Now it is worth mentioning that about half the stuff you see here is just stuff from the disassembled mech ready to be transformed into the alternate mode. Those are all really kind of their own single entity, which we'll be covering after the accessories. So if we take all those away, we're left with a much more manageable pile of accessories to deal with. First up, let's take a look at the stand that comes with this kit, and there's not much to it, but we do get a ball joint at the base, and the connector bit is on a ball joint. It can rotate around and slide up and down. The main place you're supposed to plug the stand into is right here above her butt, and once it's plugged in, you can pull off basically any pose you want without having to worry about balance. Of course, she is covered in all of these holes that are the exact same size as each other, so if you really wanted to, you could plug the stand in anywhere. So because of that, it really does allow you to do a lot of cool things with this kit. Up next, we have the 4 sets of interchangeable hands. We get this set of open hands with the fingers spread apart, closed fists, open hands with the fingers more together, and we get a pair of holding hands. These holding hands are made out of a much harder plastic, basically the same stuff that the rest of the kit is made out of, whereas the other 3 pairs of hands are made out of a more softer polycap-like material. Up next, we have the face shield and the alternate hair part. These two go hand in hand because in order to put the face shield on, you have to switch out the hair. Just pop that off, put the alternate hair piece on, and then you can put the face shield on. So here's what she'll look like with that face shield on, and I gotta say it does look pretty good. My one gripe with it, however, though, is if you look at the box art and you look at the face shield, this little part on the bottom of the face shield is supposed to be the same color as the headphones, that kind of minty green. So you are gonna have to paint that yourself if you want it to be color accurate. One last thing to note is you need to be very careful when taking the face mask off. Mine actually broke when taking it off. Not completely, it's not unusable, but this little tab here does bend back and forth, and it should not be doing that. Next up, we have the alternate face plates. We get 3 in total, and they all look really nice. Changing these out is super easy. All you have to do is take the hair off, take off the faceplate, put a new one on, and put the hair back in place. So here is Greifen with faceplate 1, here she is with faceplate 2, and here she is with faceplate 3. Now faceplate 3 actually consists of 2 parts because the inside of her mouth is a completely separate part. And I think they did a good job with it because it looks just as great as the rest of the face does. I will say one thing, I kind of wish they had more dynamic expressions that came with this kit, because the first 2 faceplates have basically exactly the same expressions, just the eyes are looking slightly different directions. Up next we have the white beret, and if you want to put this on top of her head, what you have to do is you have to take the hairpiece off, pull this piece out, flip it around and put it back in, and then put the hairpiece back on. This will allow you to attach the beret and have it sit snugly on top of her head. Now, something that I don't understand is that we get this pair of water slide decals for the eyes. We don't have any other faceplates that don't have eyes on them or anything, so I'm not sure why these are included. I guess they want you to put them over the pre-existing eyes to slightly change the direction that the eyes are looking in. I couldn't tell you, I don't get it. Anyways, moving on to her weapons, first up we have her beam dagger. This can open up like so, and it can be slid into her hand and closed back up. And this is what she'll look like when she's holding the dagger. And when the dagger's not in use, you can use this peg to plug it in right above her butt. Of course, because all the pegs and holes on this kit are the same size, you could put it wherever you want. You could plug it into her arm like this and have her still be able to hold one of her other weapons at the same time. Now, included with this kit, we do get this nice little adapter in the event that you want to store her beam dagger on her backside, but you also want to use this stand. Just sandwich that between her backside and the dagger, and you'll be able to plug in the dagger and the stand at the same time. Up next, we have the dual submachine guns. Honestly, I really like these. I'm a big fan of SMGs as it is, and the detail on these is really nice. These both feature an articulated handle that can flip outwards and rock back and forth side to side. We also get 2 magazines that can be inserted bullpup style into the rear of the SMG just like this. And this is what she'll look like wielding both of those super awesome machine guns. Last up for Greifen's accessories are the twin rocket launchers. They do require kind of a parts forming transformation, so what you have to do is extend them out, take the magazine out of the SMG, and combine the SMG with the rocket launcher. Do this for both of them, and this is what Greifen will look like holding both rocket launchers. So that is all the accessories for Greifen. Now let's go on and complete the rest of the transformation to her alternate mode using the rest of the parts. To start off the transformation, remove her tie and replace it with this new chest piece. Next, make sure to place the dagger with the stand adapter on her backside. Place these small armor parts on both of her shoulders. Next, plug the leg armor into the holes on her legs and close the front hatch over her leg. Now make sure to be very careful because this little ringlet right here has a very loose connection and it falls off nearly every time I touch this thing. Put the other leg armor on, and so far it does look really good. The feet should be fitting into the armor very snugly, and the armor wraps around the legs very well. Now the arms are where it starts to get a little more complicated. Take the arm and take the SMG and attach it onto this peg like so. Attach this assembly into the arm just like this, and then finally plug in the collapsed rocket launcher to that peg back there. Do this for both arms, and then connect them using the ports on her hips and the tab sticking out of the dagger on her back. Now this is the point where it gets really fiddly. You're going to want to try to get these hands around the handles sticking out of the SMGs. As you can see, I was struggling with it quite a bit. It took me some time to get these things just right, but thankfully this is the worst part of the transformation. Everything else just basically plugs in no problem and it's completely fine. Now that the transformation is done, this is Greifen with the exosuit equipped and it looks fantastic. Out of all 3 forms you can have this kit in, this one is by far my favorite. Hands down, this is the coolest looking mode, and it's definitely the mode that this kit is going to be displayed in up on my shelf. Now I would have mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to wait until we got into exosuit mode so I could bring it up so it would be a little bit more relevant, but Greifen's name is actually extremely fitting because Greifen is a German word which means to grab, and as you can see that name is definitely fitting with these gigantic robot hands. And of course the rest of the design inspiration for this kit comes from the Greifen, also made by Kotobukiya, from their Frame Arms line. I haven't built that kit myself, but I gotta say, design-wise, I definitely like the exosuit more than the mech. Anyways, before we wrap up the review entirely, I'd like to take a quick look at the articulation with Greifen with her exosuit equipped. As far as articulation goes, Greifen herself is a little bit more limited than she would be without the exosuit on. However, with those giant robot arms, we do get a lot more movement, so we'll be taking a close look at those in just a second. Starting off with the legs, we do get kind of an okay split. The knee bend with the armor on is a lot more limited, as you can see here. That's about the best you're gonna get. The arms have a small range of motion to move along with the larger arms, but because they're going to be connected to those handles, they're really going to be limited in how far you can move them. We do lose a lot of articulation in the head area. The side-to-side rotation is almost completely gone, and that's thanks to those ponytails in the back. You can never really get them completely out of the way, and they're always going to be bumping into something on the mech. We get a bit of an over-the-shoulder bend right here, 360 at the shoulder. Arms can move out that far. We get an almost 360-degree spin at the upper arm, bend at the elbow right there, bend at the wrist, 360 at the wrist, and another bend at the wrist. Each of the 3 fingers has 2 points of articulation. The thumb can swing in and out, and has 2 more points of articulation. We also get these super cool sub-arms that come out of the back of the arm just like this, and they have 1, 2, 3 points of articulation in the arm, up and down at the wrist, 360 at the wrist, and the claw can open and close just like that. Unfortunately, we don't get any accessories for the mechs to use or hold, so these sub arms are just for looks. So that's gonna just about do it for the review. Overall, I do like this kit. I enjoyed building it and I enjoyed posing it. I will say probably the biggest problem I have with it is fighting between the loose and tight joints. However, none of the joints are too loose or too tight to the point where it becomes a chore to handle. Anytime anything falls off this kit, which happened kind of frequently, it wasn't really a bother because it was always something that was just super easy to put back on and not really consequential to the overall build. I can definitely say that I recommend this kit to others, and I enjoyed building it as my first kotobukiya kit, and I definitely like to get and review more Frame Arms Girls kits in the future. Again, I gotta give a huge thank you to my sponsors Galactic Toys for hooking me up with this kit entirely for free. Like I said earlier, if you want one of these kits, or if you want some Gundams, if you want some hobby tools or anything like that, check out their website, and if you do so using the affiliate link in the description, that helps support me and my channel directly. And don't forget to use code YSG10 for 10% off at checkout. Alright, anyways, that's gonna do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I had a lot of fun making the video, and I had a lot of fun building the kit. It's really something that's a lot different than what I'd normally take a look at. But despite it being so different, it was just as fun as building any of the other stuff that I've built before. Alright, that's gonna do it for me for today. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like because it helps me out a whole lot. But yep, that's all I've got, so until next time, this has been UC Gundam, signing out.